Klaas Bruinsma, the 6th of October 1953, the 27th of June 1991, was a major Dutch drug lord. He was shot dead on the 27th of June 1991 by organized crime member and former police officer Martin Hoogland. He was known as De Lang, the Tall One, and also as De Dominee, the Reverend, because of his black clothing and his habit of lecturing others. Klaas Bruinsma was born on Holbeinsstraat in Amsterdam as the second child of Anton Bruinsma, a Dutch entrepreneur, and Gwendolyn Theresa Mary Kelly, a British homemaker. He attended the De Blauwe kindergarten in Amsterdam Oud-Zuid and then the Sparta School, also in Oud-Zuid. His parents divorced when he was 7 years old. From that point forward, his father's housekeeper took over the responsibilities of raising Klaas and his siblings. Klaas' father was the founder of the Dutch soda drink manufacturer Rock. He would make Klaas and his 3 siblings clean the bottles from the factory on Sunday. He was the opposite of a loving husband and father. Bruinsma later stated to his psychiatrist that the physical and psychological abuse by his father left him with serious mental scars. During his high school years, Bruinsma started using hashish and later selling it himself. He was arrested for the first time at the age of 16, 1970. In 1974, he opted to forego attending college in order to dedicate himself in the drug trade full-time. Thea became his main business partner and together they set up an organization. Thea is the daughter of a Dutch mobster and a Singaporean heroin smuggler. While Bruinsma was mainly involved with the purchase, transport and distribution of the merchandise, Modir managed the finances. She kept track of income and expenses and was also responsible for paying individuals who were hired to get rid of people who were not following instructions. In 1976, Bruinsma was convicted but was later released in 1977. Upon his release, he changed his identity to Frans van Arkel, nicknamed Lang France. He also hired professional kickboxer Andre Brilleman as his head of security and personal bodyguard after his release from prison. In 1978, he hired Etienne Urca as an extra bodyguard. Urca would later go on to become second in command and Bruinsma's right-hand man. By this time, Bruinsma expanded his smuggling operations, branching out to Germany, Belgium, France and Scandinavia. In 1979, Bruinsma was convicted once again, this time for organizing a large hashish transport from Pakistan. He was released in 1982. In 1983, he was involved in a bloody shootout after some members of his organization decided to steal large stockpiles of hashish and go into business for themselves. He shot several people and was also wounded himself. In 1984, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but he later appealed successfully and the sentence got reduced to 3 years. During his prison sentence, his father, who was battling cancer, visited him and died shortly after. After his release in 1987, Bruinsma restructured his drug organization and branched out into hotels, casinos, gaming, brothels and other legit forms of business. Etienne Urca replaced Thea Modir as Bruinsma's main business partner. A new division for exploitation of gambling machines was formed under the supervision of Sam Klepper and John Miramet, and Roy Adkins was appointed leader of the drug division. During this period, Andre Brilleman was accused of theft. He was brutally murdered by Hugo Farrell, a competing hashish trader and Thea Modir's husband, and his body was encased in concrete and dumped in the river Waal. By the end of the 1980s, Bruinsma became the largest drug trader in European history. His organization was generating around $1 million Dutch guilders per day, roughly around $500,000 at that time. Given his large success, Bruinsma was seriously contemplating retirement by this time in order to dedicate himself full-time into his lifelong passion and hobby of sailing. However, Bruinsma had one last big job. He wanted to right his previous wrong from 1979. He was planning on transporting 45 tons of hashish from Pakistan into Holland, a much larger amount than what he got busted for in 1979. The shipment had a street value of 400 million Dutch guilders, $200 million at the time. This operation became dubbed the Big Mountain by Bruinsma and his close associates. However, the operation was unsuccessful and the shipment was seized upon arrival to the Netherlands. It was all downhill for Bruinsma from this point on. He started using cocaine and began extorting other Dutch criminals. Bruinsma and his gang often hung out at the Amsterdam luxury brothel Yab Yum. In 1990, Bruinsma and his associate Roy Adkins fought in the brothel after one of their operations had gone sour. Shots were fired but nobody was injured and nobody talked to the police. Adkins was assassinated later that year. A newspaper article in 2006 reported that true ownership of the brothel had long been in the hands of organized crime figures, beginning with Klaas Bruinsma, who called it the clubhouse. After Bruinsma's death in 1991, his associates Sam Klepper and John Miramet and the Dutch Hells Angels took over control of the club. On the night of the 27th of June 1991, Bruinsma became involved in a verbal argument with Martin Hoogland, an ex-police officer who was employed by organized crime at that time. Bruinsma was shot to death by Hoogland in front of the Amsterdam Hilton Hotel at 4 a.m. Hoogland was murdered in 2004 while being on parole. Bruinsma did not leave a will. His brothers and sisters did not accept anything from his inheritance, so most of it went to his mother. The sailboats Amsterdam Met and the Neil Jacoba were confiscated by the Dutch Revenue Service. On October 2, 2003, a former bodyguard of Bruinsma, Charlie de Silva, declared in the television show of Peter Art of Rise that Mabel Wis-Smit had been a very close friend of Bruinsma's, and had been a regular guest on his yacht during the night. Wis-Smit, who at that point was engaged to Prince Friso, had told Prime Minister Jan-Peter Balkenende and Queen Beatrix that she had only been slightly acquainted with Bruinsma. Because of this incident, the Dutch government decided not to request permission of Parliament for the marriage, causing Prince Friso to lose his claim to the Dutch throne after his marriage to Wis-Smit. References